Well, what a joy and an honor it is to be here and see so many of your faces again. It's been actually nearly a year since I was here in Pentecost in May of last year. How the time goes by. And for a time, I certainly missed you, and then I didn't. I think maybe the first Sunday I slept in was the one that maybe I thought something different, but we do, Gail and I both think of you often and fondly. You were and have been such a blessing to us in that time we shared together. So I told you at that time, I'm sure I'll be back somewhere along the line, and so here I am, and I think I've got another couple of Sundays in June and August when I'll be here. We have such a rich set of stories in the lesson to the Acts, the reading from Acts, and this appearance of Jesus in John. And in both cases, we have Jesus appearing to people, coming to them unexpectedly, revealing himself in a way that they have to ask, "Who are you? Who is this?" Now, it's sort of understandable that the disciples wouldn't have known who Jesus was when they were 100 yards off in the lake at daybreak, and there's just a man up there by a little charcoal fire. And it's not unreasonable to think that it was a pretty big surprise to Paul that he was having a vision on his way to Damascus. Because they ask, "Who are you?" Now, Peter asked one of the other disciples, and he said, in both cases, we find out, "I am Jesus." In Paul's case, "I'm Jesus, whom you are persecuting." And then the story goes on, and he goes into Damascus and so forth and so on, is baptized, and his life begins. And interestingly enough, it begins with a caution, not said to Paul, but said to Ananias. He'll find out what suffering really is. He'll find out. He doesn't tell Paul. Good idea. But he tells Peter, there's going to come a day in your old age where you will be taken somewhere you don't want to go. And it made me think that may be the reason that many people might hear the voice of Jesus, but never take the step of faith. Somehow intuitively they know that to follow Jesus will include some suffering. Now, we talk a lot about suffering in Holy Week, and I don't want to dwell on that. But in both of these cases, the surprise is that the Jesus who had been crucified is speaking to different people. In one case, speaking to someone who is persecuting everybody that believes in Jesus' resurrection. It's in a way, it's a surprise that Paul responds as quickly as he does. But I would guess being struck blind would get your attention. Staying blind for 3 days and not eating would give you a time to focus your mind and your spirit. And then out of nowhere shows up this guy who says, "Well, I didn't want to be here." Nobody wants to be where they're going to be when it comes to Jesus, but this guy shows up and says, "I'm supposed to be here and baptize you." And having seen Jesus, Paul experiences the next part of the whole process, which is he receives and is indwelt by the Holy Spirit and is baptized and begins to proclaim. Now, all of that is ritualized in our baptismal liturgy. Every one of us had those kinds of elements spoken over us or to us, depending on your age when you were baptized. And if each of us had heard, maybe not at our baptism if you were baptized as an infant as I was, but surely by the time I was confirmed, if the bishop had stood up there and said, you're going to receive the Holy Spirit and God's going to send you places you don't want to go, I would not have understood what he meant. I do now. God has sent me into a lot of places I didn't want to go. And in many cases, it wasn't because I was going to suffer, but because my calling sent me into places where other people were, where there was deep grief, where there was loss, whether that loss was the person in the hospital bed losing their health and their life, or someone losing someone they loved, a husband killed in a car wreck, a child drowned in a swimming pool. Real suffering amongst those people. And I have to say, every time I had to go, I didn't want to. Now, I love to do Easter liturgy and proclaim that the Lord is risen, and we sing good hymns and wear fancy vestments and all of that. That's wonderful. But if I want to follow, it's likely I'm going to be called to go places I don't want to go. And the second thing is I'm going to have to deal with, as Peter did, the things that I did that disqualify me from going. It's not a coincidence in John that Peter denied Jesus 3 times, and then in this story, he's asked 3 times, do you love me? And Peter's right. Jesus already knows Peter's heart. But he needs Peter to say it 3 times. I love you, I love you, I love you. And 3 times he needs to hear from Jesus, tend my sheep, feed my lambs, tend my sheep. Go where you are supposed to go. And then at the end of that, you'll be taken somewhere you really don't want to go, which is his death on a cross upside down in Rome. Sort of hard to imagine what that looked like, but it doesn't sound pretty. Paul, on the other hand, had a nice, swift death. He was a citizen of Rome, so his head was taken from his shoulders. Right outside the walls of Rome, you can still go to the church Paul without the walls, meaning outside the walls of Rome, and his tomb is there. Supposedly Peter's tomb is under St. Peter's Basilica. I sent in my resume for Pope, but I don't think I'm going to get it. But I thought, why not? That's just an aside. The suffering that we are called to is a suffering that comes from being called out of self. Having our self crucified, having our own self-preservation challenged. One of the deepest instincts of any creature is the instinct to stay alive. And you stay alive by avoiding danger and predators. But Paul and Peter, in many ways, went into hostile environments to simply say, there was this man who lived in Israel, whom the Romans crucified at the behest of the Jewish leaders, and this Jesus we have seen since. Who's going to believe that? Surely there could have been a better religious story to go around with. Surely there's something a little easier for people to get a hold of. Because to talk about Jesus raised from the dead is to proclaim something that is absurd. Something that does not fit any of our physical laws, of any of our scientific grasp of reality. And yet there it is. Whatever happened, happened. I have no doubt, there's no way in my mind that I can understand all these disciples going to their death, all of them but John, through some kind of martyrdom, proclaiming that Jesus was raised from the dead. It seems to me that if they just made the story up and it didn't really catch on and you were going to lose your head over it, you'd say, okay, it's just a metaphor. And 2,000 years later, the simplest and easiest thing for a preacher to do is just say, it's a metaphor for spring and the return of life, and things get new, and things that were old become new, things that were broken are healed, and all of that's true. But there's only one way to approach the resurrection, and that is with the eyes of faith. That's what the whole blindness of Paul and the restoration of his sight is about. He saw Jesus, and then as far as we know, he never saw him again. He dreamed about him a couple of times. There came a point where Jesus ascended into heaven, and the disciples never saw him again. But they knew what they knew. And that's where the Christian conversion is important. I mean, it's essential. That somewhere within ourselves, we can find that place where I surrendered my reason, having exhausted my ability to think about resurrection. I finally go beyond that. I don't abandon reason. I don't abandon my mind. But eventually, to have any kind of spiritual life, I have to go beyond my reason. Faith, informed faith, faith for people who have thoughts and thinking and critical thinking and can ask questions, is trans-reasonable. It goes beyond my ability to make sense of it. And, there are people, scientists, who go around and make a living saying that's bunk. Anything beyond what we can see is not real. And yet they go around and proclaim dark matter because they invented it to make the whole physics of the universe make sense, and they can't find it. Now, isn't that faith? Here's the formula. It comes out bad over here if we need one more thing in our formula to make it come out right. Dark matter. Now, I don't understand it, believe me. But I read about it, and I know that's what astrophysicists have done. They have to have it in their formula to explain the universe. So why is it so hard for them to have faith in dark matter, or faith in a big bang, or faith in evolution as how we got here, none of which I want to quibble with. I'm not a scientist. But none of us are. I mean, if there's anybody here who can come do quantum physics in front of me, I want to see you after the service. But we can all say it, can't we? Quantum computing. We can all say it. I don't even understand how a transistor radio works. But I have faith that when I turn the dial, that sound is going to come out, because that's been my experience, right? If I kept turning on the knobs and nothing ever came out, I'd throw my radio away. It's the same with faith. If you keep calling on Jesus and nothing is happening, you might wonder, what's the point? And I would say the point is, in order to dial in, there's two things. One, there will be some important life-changing events that will convince you. to have faith. And you have to keep looking back on them. Keep having to tell yourself the story. Well, this happened. I have no explanation. I'm going to believe I have faith that this was God caring for me or this person. This transition, like with Paul, some conversions are so powerful that one goes completely from one kind of person to another, a complete transformation of the psyche, the emotional life, the behavior. Everything changes because God has intervened in a broken life. For others of us, we just keep learning and plodding along, but with some real high points along the way. And when we don't know what else to do, we go fishing. We go about our daily lives. We do what we know. We can't all go out and have Holy Week experiences every day of the year, or proclaim Holy Week to everybody around us every day of the year, or every time you go to work, or every time you see your family. If you've ever had anybody like that in your family, you know how annoying that is. On the other hand, there may come a point for you when Jesus says, you need to go someplace you don't want to go. And that's where it all comes down to the answer we give. Are we going to trust and go forward? Ananias could have said, there's no way I'm going to expose myself to Paul. I know exactly what he's here for. No way. That's just a dream. Let it go. Stay home. Have dinner. But he didn't. He heard it. Paul could have said, oh, the sun just got in my eyes. I had a heat stroke, and I've just been faint, and I can't see anything, and now I'm recovering. I'm going to go on with my persecution. That's always a choice. It's only in faith that we can step out into those places where we don't want to go, to love those people we don't want to love, to serve those who seem undeserving. To miss a meal, to serve somebody else a meal. If Jesus is calling you to something, listen. If you think there's something in your life worse than Peter denying Jesus 3 times the night before he was crucified, and you think you can't be forgiven, listen to this story. Don't you love me? Don't you love me? Yes, yes. Don't you love me? Yes. Then go forth and tend the sheep. Do what I've called you to do. It will be okay. Only there's no it will be okay in the New Testament. It will be suffering, and then it'll be glory. That's why it's so hard to go. No suffering, no glory. So follow, listen, and then go about your business.